The Commander Reset event is coming soon to Rise of Kingdoms, so today we're going to go over everything you need to know about this event, including how it works, how much it costs, and a lot of your frequently asked questions. And then later in the video I'm going to go over the best commanders that you should reset with this event, and maybe some suggestions on who you should invest in after you get your sculptures back. But before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Look who came to say hi. She just likes to lay on my lap when I film these videos. She never lays on my lap any other time. It's only when I'm filming. She's like, oh, I just want to go ahead and interrupt you. Is that okay? Now, as you guys know, I'm a sponsored partner creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, including in-depth guides and breaking news, definitely subscribe down below and drop a thumbs up while you're down there. It helps out the channel a ton. Okay, the first thing we're going to do in this video is go over exactly how this event works, because even though we covered this in my reveal video for Sun Tzu Prime, I see a ton of misinformation. A lot of people are super confused as to how this event actually works. So let's go over it here today and answer all of your questions that I've been seeing on Discord, YouTube comments, and everywhere else. The first thing we have to talk about, okay, how many commanders can you reset? The answer is one. You only get one commander reset when this event comes around. As you can see literally on the screen here, during the event you may spend gems to reset all skills for one legendary commander of your choice. That's it. Now, in the same vein as this, I've seen other people asking, is this a one-time event just like the commander swap? And to that I say, we actually do not know. Now, when the commander swap event was announced, revealed, and implemented, they specifically said that the commander swap event would only exist one time per character. Okay, so you got it when it first came around, or you got it after you completed KVK 2. Those were the two instances, and that's how new players are still able to get the commander swap event and sort of catch up a little bit with some of the players that have been playing for a while. With the commander reset event, you only get one commander reset, and they have not specified if this is going to be a one-time thing, or maybe this will come around once a year. Maybe this will come around just for special events like the Chinese New Year, or maybe for the anniversary of Rise of Kingdoms. Who knows? But it is important to know that they did not specify, which means they're kind of leaving the door open, right? If this event goes really well, maybe it will come back at some point in the future. If it does not go very well, or if people don't like it, maybe they won't bring it back at all. The next thing we have to talk about is how much this event actually costs, okay? Because there is so much confusion around this, which is surprising to me because I thought it was pretty clear based on these screenshots that I shared in my last video. But let's go over this really quick. Okay, a lot of people seem to think that this event costs 69,000 gems. That is not what this costs. It depends on the commander that you are resetting. Okay, so let's just read this together. You have selected this commander to reset skills, and the following materials will be refunded. Confirming this reset will consume gems, with every legendary commander sculpture returned costing 100 gems. Okay, so what does this mean, right? Because I've gotten this question. A lot of people have said, hey, if I have a commander that is 5511, is it still going to cost 69,000 gems? The answer is no. Okay, the number of sculptures that you get back is what determines the cost here. So if you reset a commander that's 5511 and you've used universals on them to get there, you're going to get 190 legendary commander sculptures back, and that's going to cost you 19,000 gems. However, keep in mind, you only get one reset. Okay, so once you confirm that reset, you're locked in. You get 190 sculptures, and that's it. You are done. And this is why a lot of people feel like the event costs 69,000, because they think that of course you're going to want to get the maximum value out of this event, right? Like you want to get the most number of sculptures back that you can, and I understand that, but unless the developers decide to change something, this is what it costs for the maximum possible return on this event. But you do not have to do this. In fact, a lot of you won't even be able to, even if you have the gems to do so. Let me say that again. A lot of you will not be getting back 690 legendary commander sculptures, even if you have 69,000 gems to spend. Why is that? The reason is because you are only getting back the universal sculptures that you put into that commander. So let's just take my Nevsky for example. Okay, if you click the eye on the top right corner and I scroll down here, you'll see that I have used 22 Nevsky sculptures and 668 legendary commander sculptures. Okay, so if I decide to reset my Nevsky, who is expertise by the way, I am not going to get 690 legendary commander sculptures back. I'm going to get 668 commander sculptures back, which means this will cost 66,800 gems. Okay, that's how this event works no matter what commander you pick. So for example, my CPO Prime, I have 225 CPO sculptures and 465 universal legendary commander sculptures, which means if I reset this commander, it will cost 46,500 gems. I will get back 465 legendary commander sculptures, and that's it. That is my one swap. I am done. So then why did I say that a lot of you are not going to get back 690 sculptures if you have 69,000 gems to spend? And the answer is, how many commanders do you have where you actually spent 690 universals only, and that's it? The answer is probably fewer than you think. Even my Bai Chi, if I scroll down here, I have 626 because I spun the wheel. Emperor Qin, I use 650, so again, not the full 690. Same thing with Ragnar, same thing with Gangam Chan over here. I got 616 for him. So this is actually going to play a crucial part in deciding who you should be resetting, and we'll talk about that later in the video. But that's how this event works, and that's how much it's going to cost you depending on the commander you actually pick. Now, another question that a lot of people asked is, can I reset a commander even if they're not expertise? So for example, if back in the day you used Saladin but you never expertised him, great news, yes, you can still reset this commander. Okay, now for me, I don't actually know how many sculptures I put into Saladin as a universal, but it was probably a lot considering back in the day he was a mightiest governor commander, so I wasn't winning those back in the day. All right, another question that a lot of people had is, can you partially reset a commander, right? So let's say you only have 30,000 gems to spend here, but you want to reset your Ragnar. Can you reset 300 sculptures worth of his skills in exchange for the 30,000 gems? The answer is no. Okay, there is no partial resets here. You must reset the entire commander, so you have to be able to afford whatever the cost is actually going to be for that specific commander. So that might be a little bit of a bummer for you guys who are short on gems and you only ever expertise commanders and you only ever use universals on them. But if we're being honest, I think that that crowd is relatively small, right? Most people have a couple of mistakes or outdated commanders that you don't use anymore, you'll never use. Again, I've got Tariq here, I've got Nebu, I've got Chook. Like, these are commanders I'm probably never going to use. They're partially invested in, I could reset them. Now, on the topic of not having enough gems for this event, if you are a spender, one thing that is worth noting is that in the gem store there is a double value for your first purchase here. Okay, so in this case you'll get 50,000 gems for $100. Of course, you should be using Flux scripts and you should be using the online store directly through Rise of Kingdoms. That's the best way to buy anything in the game. Of course, before you spend any money in this game, it is a mobile game, by the way. Okay, so prioritize your bills, prioritize your family, prioritize saving for the future, prioritize a bunch of other things before you spend on a mobile game. Okay, but if you do have disposable entertainment income that you can spend or you want to spend on Rise of Kingdoms, this is a place to do it. And when you think about 69,000 gems, 50k gems for $100 gets you a majority of the way there. You probably have some gems on your account, and if you don't, an extra 20 with the double purchase will get you there as well. Now, it's also worth noting that at the beginning of the year, and you guys can let me know in the comment section below because I actually didn't do this, but they did actually reset the double gems for the first purchase reward. Okay, is that still a thing? You guys can let me know in the comment section below. In other words, I know it was like a week-long event or something like that. Did they only reset the double gems for that week, or did they reset it for everybody during that week? You can let me know in the comments, but either way, it is worth noting that if you didn't use the double gems here, you can, and that's probably the fastest way to just get gems and not have to buy your way up through bundles. Even though there's a lot of value to some of these bundles, you know, you might not want to spend $300 or something, and you know, you just want to get the gems and that's it. This might be the best way to do it. And even from that perspective, right, when you start to think about the value of this event and you think, okay, well, I can spend maybe $100 or upwards of $150 to get all the gems that I need to do here, that's still less than it costs to max Minamoto, right? It costs $200 to max Minamoto, or it costs 100 or 150 to get a full legendary commander's worth of universal sculptures that you can use on anybody. Even from a spender's perspective, the value of this event is insane. Now, the next question that I see a lot of people asking is, what happens with commanders like my Saladin where the game has not recorded the investment for this commander? And technically, we do not have an answer yet. Okay, we don't know exactly how that's going to work, but what I will say is the official response from support is that when you go to reset a commander, it will show you a preview of what you will be getting back for your gem cost. So basically this, right, you're gonna see this before you actually do the reset. So when this event does come around, go ahead and grab one of those commanders that you invested in a long time ago and just double check and see, you know, what will you get back if you reset that commander. Maybe the game will do some sort of estimate, maybe they won't even let you try to reset them because they're too old, maybe they will give you, you know, the full value in universals, or maybe it'll be like 50-50 or something along those lines. I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see for it to come into the game, but just know that what you see on this screen is what you will get back for any given commander. So just double check this, and before you click this confirm button, double check that you're getting back the number of sculptures that you think is the highest value to you. Okay, next I want to address the value of this event, because I think this has been a big point of contention for the community, and I think not even necessarily the cost of the event, right? Like people look at the 69,000, they see that that's a pretty big number, right? And despite that though, because it's only 100 gems per sculpture, I don't think anybody is really debating the value of the event, right? I mean, realistically, you can't look at 100 gems per legendary commander sculpture and say that that's bad value, because objectively that's wrong. I mean, just straight up, I mean, like if we look in the VIP shop, legendary commander sculptures are 2,000 gems a piece, and when we look at things like holiday events where, you know, you're getting on average about one legendary commander sculpture for 1,000 gems, you know, when you look at a legendary commander sculpture for 100 gems, it's just one of the best values in the game, right? I mean, like for example, if for 7 days they changed this VIP shop value to 100 gems and they moved it all the way up to the top of the track here so you could get it even at VIP 0, right, then everyone would be losing their mind. Everyone would be like, oh my god, this is the best event in the game, this is such good value, this is incredible, oh my god, Lilith finally listened to the community, they're finally giving us a good value event. But because they showed the total maximum cost of this event, everyone kind of lost their mind here, right? All that to say, I don't think anybody is going to be able to convince anyone that 100 gems per sculpture is bad value when you just look at pretty much any other event in the game and we know that that's insanely good value, right? I think the problem people have with this is the time frame. I think a lot of people, you know, they knew this event was coming, or at least if you were subscribed to the channel you knew, because I told everybody on December 22nd that this event was coming around. You've had a couple of weeks knowing this thing would come, and some people decided to stockpile gems, other people did not, right? Or they stockpiled some, but it's not enough. And to be fair, I don't think anybody predicted that it would cost this much, right? However, I think the biggest point of contention is that the cost to get the maximum value here is higher than people thought it would be, even though the per sculpture value is insanely good. It's like the best in the game pretty much, besides the 7k gem event, because if you complete it you get all the gems back. And I think to make things worse, when we look at the reveal video, it shows that this event is only around for 6 days, right? Now keep in mind these dates are wrong, because right now I'm recording this on the 18th, so obviously we're already beyond this, right? So we don't actually know how long this event will stick around. It could be 6 days, it could be 7 days, it could be longer than that, it could be shorter than that, it could be a 3-day event, right? We have no idea. What I think the developers should do if they're watching this video, I think straight up they should make this like a 45-day event. Literally just leave it up for 45 days. Everybody can only do it once anyway, like it's a one-time thing, so it's not like people can abuse it because it's around for 45 days. Like no, just give people plenty of time to get as many gems as possible, whether it's through farming, whether it's through, you know, doing events or whatever the case might be. Maybe people are going to wait for a paycheck that won't come until 2 weeks later and then they can spend, but the event's already over at that point, right? Like there's so many benefits to leaving this event live for a longer period of time. So I would say, you know, again, 30 days, 45 days, something like that, I think would go a long way when it comes to community goodwill with this event, if they're not going to lower the cost, right? Which again, it's really hard to, you know, ask them to lower the cost when the cost is already dirt cheap. This is dirt cheap, guys. A gold key is 600 gems, right? Like I can't stress this enough. Like 500,000 food costs more than this, you know what I mean? Like this is such an insanely cheap event that I think we're going to be hard pressed to convince them to lower the price, but maybe we can convince them to extend the duration of this event, so way more players can get as much value out of this event as possible. That's my 2 cents on that. Now, one of the most common sort of rebuttals to the value argument is, Omniarch, listen, you know, I know it's 100 gems per sculpture, but really it's not, because you're losing a commander and therefore they're kind of selling you back your own sculptures, right? And the answer is no, that is just categorically wrong. That is not what's happening here. That is the classic sunk cost fallacy, right? So what a lot of people think is like, okay, well, I'm kind of giving up a commander and it's costing gems just to get back the sculptures that I already spent on that commander, right? And so it kind of feels bad in that way. But really, when you think about it, you're not getting your sculptures back, because those sculptures are gone. Just in the same way, you go to the grocery store and you buy groceries, you give them money for the groceries. That's not still your money. It's gone. You've spent it, right? That is gone. Now you've got groceries. That's what you have. You do not have that money anymore. And in the same way, when you spend 690 legendary commander sculptures on Sargon, you've spent those sculptures. They are gone. That is the sunk cost. You have committed to that investment and they are gone now. So you are not getting back your legendary commander sculptures because you do not have those legendary commander sculptures. You have spent them. They are gone. They've gone into the ether. They've vanished into pixie dust. And in exchange, you got some commander in the past that you've been using, by the way, throughout however long you've had them. Now you might regret that investment, but I mean, that's just the choice that you made. We all make mistakes, right? I mean, I have Sargon expertise. Do you know what I mean? So it is what it is, right? Like you don't have to feel bad about that, about making a mistake. Most players make mistakes. The point I'm trying to make here is that these are not really your legendary commander sculptures. What you're paying for is kind of the ability to just undo a mistake, really. I mean, even if it's a power creep inflicted mistake, in other words, a commander that was a good investment but is no longer good because of power creep, and that's not your fault, even still, power creep is part of the game. It's been part of the game since day one, and it's been part of literally every game that I've ever played, pretty much. There are some exceptions, like maybe certain competitive games and things like that, where like the tools of the game don't necessarily change, just the player skill. But if I can describe this in another way, it would be like, okay, you go into Apple and you spend $1,000 on a brand new iPhone, right? And then 4 years goes by and they've released 4 new iPhones, and you go back into that same Apple store and you say, hey, this iPhone's not the best iPhone anymore. I want the new one. And they say, okay, well, you bought it 4 years ago, but here's what we'll do. We're going to give you a full refund, but in exchange, we're taking back that 4-year-old iPhone and it's going to cost you $100. Are they selling you back your own money? No, of course they're not. You got to use that phone for 4 years. Like, what are we talking about? This is what I'm talking about, where it's kind of a sunk cost fallacy. These aren't really your sculptures anymore, right? They're kind of just giving you the ability to refund the sculptures for whatever reason, whether you made a mistake, power creep, whatever the case might be. No questions asked, you get everything back, but there is a cost associated with that, obviously, right? And of course there would be. Everyone knew it. Even in the post where they announced this, they said that there would be a cost. So that's why the sort of, they're selling our sculptures back to us, that argument sounds good on paper, but once you think about it for like 2 seconds, it's like, oh, actually, wait, no, that doesn't make sense. Nobody uses that logic in literally any other aspect of their life. Of course, that's not what's happening here. Of course, that doesn't make any sense, right? Now, all of that being said, I was curious to know what the community at large thought that this event should cost, because even though we look at it as 100 gems per sculpture, if people are still mad about that cost, I'm just curious, what do you guys think it should cost? So I put this poll up on my YouTube channel. If you guys did not see this poll or vote in this poll, that means you're probably not subscribed. You might think you are, but you're actually not. Double check down below and subscribe. But I said, how many gems do you think is a fair and reasonable price for the Commander Reset event? Obviously, we would all prefer it to be free, but the truth is that it was always going to cost something. So vote in good faith what you think the event is worth. And here we've got a couple of different breakdowns, a couple of brackets here, a couple of ranges of gem cost, because of course I'm limited to only 4, right? So I would have loved to do a cheaper one and maybe one in between these, but realistically, these were the breakdowns I put: 15k to 25k, 25k to 35k, 35k to 50k, and 69k, which is the current price. This was the option that you would pick if you thought the current price is fair, and it is what it is, right? So we have 3.5 thousand people voting on this poll, and surprise, surprise, the cheapest option won, right? So this isn't exactly super valuable data, because realistically, I mean, everybody is self-serving, myself included. All of us would like it to be as cheap as possible, so of course a majority of people are just going to pick the cheapest one, right? So it's kind of a no-brainer. This data doesn't really mean that much, but it is at least worth noting that only about 50% of people picked the smaller one. The other 46% of people are happy to spend more than 25,000 gems on this event, right? Whether it's this one, or this one. So based on that, I do think that a lot of people are actually seeing the value here, and they are saying like, look, okay, we can understand why it costs so much, because it is obviously a very valuable event. But if you guys want to vote in this poll, check it out on my channel. It'll be in the posts section, and if you don't want to miss more polls like this in the future, then definitely go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Just so you guys know, I did actually link this poll to the community managers, just so that way they can keep an eye on this and they can, you know, take this into account. Obviously, I don't know if they're going to change the price of this. You know, realistically, I can't imagine they will, right? Like I would not bank on that if I were you. I would not bank on them lowering the price, but you know, hey, maybe if they look at this poll again, I've gone on record saying that I think 69,000 gems. Frankly, I don't think that that's too unreasonable considering how many sculptures you're getting here and considering that it is flexible based on which commander you pick, right? Like if you don't have 69,000, you could still get value here by resetting a 5511 or a 5551 commander. All right, now the next question that I see a lot of is, when is this event coming, right? Because obviously, like I said before, these dates at the top here, this is gone, this is over, right? These dates have already passed. So when is this actually going to come? The original announcement for this event said that it would come in January of 2026. As far as I know, the update that brings this event with it is going to land on the 20th of January, right? So anytime after the 20th of January is when this event is going to be live. Okay, so again, if they stick with their original announcement, it will come within the next 2 weeks, really. I mean, that's kind of how it's going to be. So if you haven't started saving gems yet, I would start saving now. I would start farming gems. I would do all the events that you could possibly do. Chain barbarians, if you can do that, like whatever you can do, I would try to do, because this event is coming. With all that out of the way, let's talk about who you actually should reset during this event, because I think that's another big decision that people have to make, right? The first one is, do they want to participate in this event, right? Because again, I mean, 69,000 gems, even for spenders, is kind of a lot of gems. Now, it's not the whales, they don't care. That's pocket change, it doesn't matter, right? But even for like low and mid spenders, like 69,000 gems is not it ain't nothing. Let's just be real. Okay, that is a significant amount of gems. So should you participate? That's up to you. Are there any massive mistakes on your account? Then you take that into consideration, right? For me, if I were to give you guys advice, you know, again, 100 gems per legendary commander sculpture is pretty much the best value you're ever going to get in this game. So you should take some advantage of it if you can, right? Even if it's not the full 690, you should do what you can afford to do when this event comes around. That's my opinion. And again, only if you've got a commander that is worth resetting. But really, the advice of which commanders that you should reset, it's kind of going to vary from account to account, right? It's going to depend. Do you have the equipment and armaments to even run that commander in the field, even if you wanted to, even if there was some new commander that comes out later that revives them, like just in the case of Alexander the Great with Liu Che, right? Alexander the Great kind of got like this resurgence. So those are things to consider. But the other thing to consider is, again, like I said before, the number of universals that you actually used on a commander, right? If I come in here and I say, okay, guys, everyone should be resetting Nevsky because he's not good anymore. He's never going to come back into the meta. We're going down the combo damage path for cavalry. You're never going to use Nevsky again. Don't even bother. And then you say, okay, I'll reset my Nevsky. But then you scroll down and you realize, oh, wait, I got all of my commander sculptures from the Wheel of Fortune for Nevsky, and I only used 50 universals on him, right? Like, okay, well, if that's the case, then obviously you're not going to reset your Nevsky because you're only going to get 50 sculptures back. So it's not worth getting only 50 sculptures back. You might as well reset somebody else that you've spent more legendary commander sculptures on. Does that make sense? So there's not really a sort of blanket best answer. I can just kind of guide you in the right direction, and then you have to look at your account and say, okay, how many universals did I spend on them? Is it worth it to reset this commander? One sort of rule of thumb that I'll give you guys is, if you have some older rally or garrison commanders, those are probably some of the best candidates to reset for this event. Why is that? Well, first of all, you know, I think that it is more likely for a field commander to regain relevance than it is for a rally garrison commander to regain relevance. And why is that? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. Rally garrison is the sort of cutting edge, cutthroat, like the pinnacle of the game. These are the players that need to have every single stat point, every single special inscription, every single special talent, iconic tier 5, everything on their gear, right? And so the rally garrison meta very rarely sort of backtracks and goes back to an older commander. Now, the exception there is Attila. Obviously, I know you guys are already trying to write that in the comments. Of course, Attila is relevant, highly relevant right now, even amongst like open fielders, for example. So of course, Attila does not fit that mold. Attila, however, is the exception, not the rule. He's simply built different. Okay. Also, YSG is technically a garrison commander. I always forget that, but everybody knows he's actually an open field commander. Okay. But if you come in here and you say, okay, back in the day, I expertised Artemisia, as beautiful as she might be, I'm never going to use her again. you know, then you might want to reset her. Same thing with Gilgamesh, same thing with Amanitore, same thing with Chandragupta, same thing with Jadwiga, right? I know she's got the mobility tree, but really, like, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find a scenario in the future where the cutting edge of the game backtracks to some of these super old rally or garrison commanders, right? For me, Zenobia actually is probably going to be the commander that I reset, because this is the commander on my account that provides the least amount of value and gives me the most number of universals back. I'm going to get 680 from her, and there's really nobody else on my account that even comes close there, unless I can actually reset some of these gold key commanders, which again, I don't know what the game is going to give me back. And that brings me to my next point. You know, if you are a newer player and back in the day in KVK1 you dumped a ton of universals into these gold key commanders, well, now is your chance to get that value back, right? Now's your chance to undo that mistake that you made all the way back in the day and get those commander sculptures. Now, if it turns out to be the case that for us old people, right, for all the unks in the audience, okay, for those of us that started prior to July of 2020, maybe it's the case that the developers decide to let us reset these older commanders. I think that might be a little bit unfair for the brand new players to the game, but I mean, really, it's not our fault that they weren't keeping track of this stuff, right? And who's to say I didn't dump 690 legendary commander sculptures into Julius Caesar? If they weren't tracking it, they can't prove it, right? So, you know, I don't know what their strategy is going to be there, but again, double check. I said this earlier, but double check if you are a much older player, maybe you're returning to Rise of Kingdoms because you heard about this event and you heard about Sun Tzu Prime. Double check your older gold key commanders. Maybe they will extend an olive branch and let us sort of reset them for some high number of universals back. That would be another direction that I would point you in. If you can get universals back from gold key commanders, you probably should, right? Because these are the commanders that are least likely to become meta relevant ever again, because if we look at the museum, all the buffs are a joke, right? Most of these buffs don't do anything. They don't move the needle. They're not very relevant, and I think that trend is probably going to persist, because even the latest and greatest museum relics don't really move the needle for those involved. So that's my second recommendation. Now, the last sort of thing that I'll say here for who you should reset is, again, let's say you don't have any gold key commanders that you can reset, you don't have any old rally garrison commanders that you can reset, then the next direction I would point you in is open field commanders that seem very unlikely to ever return to the meta, right? So this is where we start to look at our commanders like Sargon and we say, okay, like realistically, are we ever going to use Sargon, right? I mean, his damage over time is very bad in any meta. It's just not very good unless, you know, back in the day you could swarm down a flag with him, and that would be like the main time you would get max value here. Besides that, though, in the open field, he's probably never coming back, right? I mean, he's skill damage. We're really not probably going to see a super strong skill damage infantry meta in the future. And even if we do, even in that scenario, that unlikely scenario, we've got commanders that just far outpace him, far exceed his value. Even in the case of Ragnar, Scipio, and even Guan Yu, I would say is more likely to return to the meta than somebody like Sargon, sheerly because of his AoE, his silence, his skills, and his museum could possibly get more buffs. Like, there's just really not a world to me that I see Sargon coming back unless they do something insane with damage over time. And once you start to build like those, the more exceptions you try to make in your head for like, okay, what would have to be true for this commander to come back, you know, once you start to get more and more complicated, then it's like, okay, maybe this commander is just the least likely thing to come back to the meta, right? So Sargon is definitely a commander that I would recommend potentially resetting. I mentioned this earlier, Saladin, for me, unfortunately, I don't know the investment cost, but if you did invest in him after 2020 and you see that you can get back, you know, 600 plus sculptures, I would say go ahead and do that. Commanders like Boudica Prime are another really good example of a commander that probably is just never going to come back to the meta, right? I mean, her damage factor is very low. It is single target, and she doesn't have enough stats to compete in the current meta. She doesn't have enough march speed to compete in the current meta, and she's not doing anything else very fancy that would really kind of warrant taking her off the bench, right? Unless we start to see a meta in the future where there's a ton of control effects, and like even then you can get rid of control effects with Yue Liang, right? As an archer, you know what I mean? Archers are really known for their massive AoE skill damage, and Boudica is a single target damage commander, so she's kind of an oddball. This is definitely, for me, a commander that I would consider resetting, because there's just really not a world that she's even going to land in the top 2 best archer marches, maybe not even top 3, right? Like, she hasn't been in the 3 archer lineup for a while at this point, and the deck is stacked against her in terms of her ever coming back, unless we see some crazy formation or something like that. And then from there, we can go back and look at other open field commanders that, again, are just probably never going to come back in the meta, like Genghis Khan. Zhang Yu, I know I still occasionally see a Zhang Yu in the field, which is kind of crazy, right? But again, there's just not enough stats here. There's not enough damage here, even with the lower rage requirement. Commanders like Leonidas, this commander will probably never come back into the open field meta. Ramses, Edward of Woodstock, if you have open field leadership commanders like Honda, like these commanders are very unlikely to ever return to the open field meta. And so if you dumped a ton of universals into them, maybe you can now get some value back out of them. Now, the last thing we have to talk about is, okay, now that you've reset your commander, who should you invest in, right? We are in January of 2026. What are the best investments and best places to reinvest those sculptures and get the most value out of them today? And the answer to that question is, again, very dependent on your own account, right? If you're looking to expand to a second infantry march or a second archer march or a second cavalry march, like you need to know, like, okay, just because you can get the commander doesn't mean you can run a second army, because do you have the gear to run that army? Do you have the armaments to run that army, right? Like there's a lot of other factors that have to be considered on a per player basis. I think a lot of people are looking at Sun Tzu Prime and they're saying like, this is the obvious choice. This is the obvious commander that you should be getting with this event. And I think a lot of the reason why people think that is because they revealed them at the exact same time, right? They revealed Sun Tzu Prime and in the same breath, they were like, great news, you could reset your old commander, right? So I think a lot of people are kind of associating these two commanders, so much so that I've even seen comments saying, wow, it's so scummy of them to make Sun Tzu Prime cost 69,000 gems. And it's just like, wow, you just jumped through so many mental hoops to arrive at that conclusion. Let's be clear, this commander does not cost 69,000 gems. You don't have to spend gems to max this commander. In fact, there's an event where you can get Sun Tzu Prime unlocked for free, and then you can max him with universals. And frankly, he's probably going to show up on the Wheel of Fortune in February. Okay, so like, even if you just want to wait for that, you can wait for that. Okay, so you don't have to get Sun Tzu Prime with this event. And I think that's another really important thing to point out here when people are talking about the value of this event. And the main reason why this costs more than commander swap is because there is theoretically more value in this event than commander swap, because the problem with commander swap is you needed to own the commander that you wanted to swap to, right? So, you know, in the case of King Arthur, you were able to unlock him for free and you could do the swap and do all that, and that was great, right? But for all those players that are, you know, at the end of KVK2, they have to go through the Gathering of Heroes event and they have to like unlock the commander that they want, and there's different tiers, and so you got to struggle to get the right commander. If you wanted, you know, Achilles, for example, he's like in tier 3, and so it's like impossible to get him as free to play. All that to say, the downside of commander swap is you needed both commanders, and I think that's what a lot of people forget. When it comes to this event with commander reset, you don't have to invest those commander sculptures right now. In fact, the smartest thing for a lot of people would probably be to save those sculptures. Wait, do not spend them right now. Spend them when you need to go into battle. When KVK is about to open, Pass 5 is about to open, you're about to go into the battlefield, that's when you max a commander, right? Because then you know, okay, this is the best thing that I could use in this exact moment. This is what I need to get. And that's the thing, right? You can reset your Sargon and then take those 690 sculptures and bank them for 6 to 12 months, and you can get whatever the next Emperor Qin is, right? And by the way, I'm not convinced Sun Tzu is the Emperor Qin of infantry. I'm not seeing it. He's a single target damage commander with AoE true damage. The value of that AoE true damage has to be seen in battle to really understand how strong it is. But you know, just looking at it, you know, at first glance, I'm not able to arrive at the conclusion that he's going to be outputting as much damage as Emperor Qin, because Emperor Qin's damage output is just through the roof. It's insane, right? And there's nothing on this kit that suggests that he's going to be able to keep up with the damage per second of Emperor Qin. So I really, you know, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I don't necessarily think that this is the Emperor Qin of infantry, even though he is clearly going to be extremely good, right? I mean, it just is what it is. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. He's going to be super strong. So when we think about, okay, all that being said, who should I invest in Omniarch? Okay, well, of course, if you've got nothing else to get, then Sun Tzu is probably your best choice, right? If you already have Emperor Qin, Bai Qi, Liu Che, you've already got Achilles, you've already got all these other commanders, then yeah, I mean, Sun Tzu is the latest hotness, right? He's the latest and greatest, and he's the most exciting thing on the block right now. So grab Sun Tzu Prime if you want to get him. If you've got nothing else to grab, he's probably what I'm going to be investing in. But I would highly encourage you guys to wait for other people to test him first. I'm not going to be doing any KVK fighting by the time he comes into the game, so you know, look for those YouTubers who are going to be in KVK at that time, so you can see real world battle feedback for Sun Tzu, right? It's going to be really hard to test Sun Tzu in a vacuum because he's single target, and so if you're doing duels and stuff, he's going to outperform there because he's built for duels, right? And you don't see the value of the AoE of the other commanders you're testing against. For example, he's always going to output more damage than Bai Chi because he hits harder to one target, right? So does that mean he's better than Bai Chi? Not necessarily. Bai Chi has got an AoE, right? So, it's going to be hard to evaluate him in a testing stance. Maybe I'll try to do that on the channel, or maybe we'll do some sim testing before he lands in the game. But my point is, the value of this reset is that you don't have to get him in that moment. You can literally just literally wait for the whales to test, literally wait for other people in your kingdom or in your camp or whatever to do and make that investment, and then see if he's actually worth it. Besides that, if I'm going to point you in any single direction here when it comes to commanders that are in the game, right? Like, let's say you don't want to save those sculptures, you want to spend them right now, you either get Sun Tzu, maybe you already have enough for Sun Tzu, you want to get somebody else. As I said before, I still think Emperor Qin is going to be the strongest commander in the game. Even after Sun Tzu Prime comes out, I still think he's going to be the king. Okay, I still think he's going to be the top DPS. He's going to deal the most sev wounds to the enemy. I mean, it's really hard to debate that when he has just constant 5 target AoE on the field. There's really no getting around it. He's just super good, right? So if you don't have Emperor Qin yet, I still think, again, this is wait for testing, but if I had to pick right now, I would say Emperor Qin is probably still a stronger commander than Sun Tzu Prime. Just straight up, that's what I think. That's how I think we're gonna look at this in a couple of weeks when Sun Tzu lands in the game. I still think we're gonna look at this and say, okay, Emperor Qin, he's still the best of the best. He's still the best commander in the game, even if Sun Tzu is up there, right? So Emperor Qin should be at the top of your list for commanders to invest in. Other honorable mentions, of course, are Bai Chi, because he's gonna work really well with Sun Tzu Prime. Of course, we have Achilles. He's proven to be very strong in the open field. Even Arthur is still insane. I know he's a year old at this point, but he just absolutely pops off in the open field. Gangam Chan is solid. I would caution you on him. He is single target damage. For me, he performed really well in this KVK, but is he a Emperor Qin? No, he's straight up not. So just careful with that. Typically AoE commanders just last longer in the meta. Historically, that's always been the case. Okay, so I'm not saying Gangam Chan is bad. He's just not. Objectively, he is solid. He's very tanky. But again, if we look at the last 7 years worth of data, the truth is AoE commanders typically reign supreme in the open field. It just is what it is, right? So just keep that in mind. Liu Che, I think, is still a solid investment. He's definitely a little bit older at this point, but he's still a 5 target smite damage AoE, so it's really hard to argue with that. He still pops off. He still has the combo damage with that extra rage. So there's a lot to love here. A couple of commanders that I would advise you to maybe avoid or hold off on, right? Like Ragnar, probably don't get him, right? I think again, skill damage infantry is really, with this release, it's officially it's outdated, right? It is officially outdated. We're not going to be running that after this, most likely. So keep that in mind. Same thing with CPO, right? And same thing with any skill damage cavalry. It doesn't make sense to get skill damage cavalry right now. That is sort of the old meta, and we are quickly going away from that. Other commanders I would caution you on are open field leadership commanders. Philip has served his purpose and his role of sort of, being the duct tape that holds cavalry together until we got our Achilles, right? I think Philip's time is quickly sunsetting, if we're being honest with ourselves. There's barely a reason to use him with anybody other than cavalry at this point, and even with cavalry, he just is so squishy. And I know I still have to make my end of KVK video, but Philip is literally paper thin. He literally pops instantaneously. There's almost nothing you can do about it. It's very hard to use Philip in the open field, at least in highly competitive KVKs where your enemy is very strong, right? If you're going up against enemies that are constantly retreating and you can chase them down, yes, you're going to get great reports with Philip because he's got the instant proc. But besides that, in real actual tough murder ball fights, Philip just collapses. He really just does. Hector might be a little bit better strictly because of his stat distribution. He's just objectively more tanky, and he deals a lot of damage. Even though it's single target, it's a lot of damage, if we're being honest. He's a bit supportive, so Hector is kind of the new Philip in my opinion. But even still, is he going to age super well? It's hard to say, right? Again, if you look back at throughout history, how often is the open field meta defined by the leadership commanders? It's almost never, right? They're usually a flash in the pan. They kind of hold you over till you get what you actually want, and there's value in that, especially because they're universal and you can use them with anybody. But again, is it the best investment right now? Maybe not. I'm not super convinced. The only exception with Hector is if you are going to be a garrison leader. I know some people have found pretty good success using Hector in garrison, even my current KVK. Sometimes it works. I know leadership garrisons get a bad rap, but their value comes from being able to just stuff whatever you can in there, and it is what it is. So that's the only kind of exception to Hector. You might want to get Hector here if you've got nothing else better and you're a garrison leader. Then okay, maybe Hector is the play for you. But again, open field leadership, I'm bearish on an open field leadership in January of 2026. That's just where I'm at right now for me personally, and that's pretty much it. But guys, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I know this was a much longer video than I thought it would be, but hopefully this video answers all of your questions, all of your concerns. Hopefully you guys understand the event better. Hopefully you understand who you might want to reset now and who you might want to invest in afterwards. And if you made it to the end of the video, please consider dropping a thumbs up on it. It really helps out the channel a ton. It helps get this video out into the YouTube algorithm so all the Rise of Kingdoms players might see it. And you might think you're subscribed because you've seen a ton of my videos, but you're actually not. Double check down below and comment your thoughts on the Commander Reset event. Are you excited? Are you upset that you don't have enough time to save gems? Are you upset that you don't have enough gems, period? Let me know in the comment section below. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.